So what you do is you take the problem and you narrow it until they'll face it. Okay, then they face it. Then what happens? They get more competent. That's what happens. And then they get better at facing all problems. So they don't just learn how to deal with that specific problem. They learn a lesson that generalizes across problems. They get braver. When you use exposure therapy, people don't get less afraid. They get braver. And that's way better because braver moves from situation to situation. Okay, so the question is, here's the question. If you faced everything that was put in front of you, who would you be? Well, the biblical answer is you'd be a true son of God. That's the biblical answer. It's like, well, do you believe that? Well, it depends on what you mean by believe. Do you think that do you have a better bet than facing what's there? Well, you just have to be sensible about it for a moment. It's like, is your theory that you're going to adapt better using falsehood and avoidance? Because that's the contrary theory. You either face it, and you do that predicated on the faith that something in you will respond if you do, or you don't face it. That's it. Those are the options. If you don't face it, that's faith too. That's faith in the notion that avoidance and deception will suffice.
I think that for a lot of people, it's born out of fear. It's born out of being a people pleaser.
Yeah.
And not wanting to hurt other people around you and not wanting to tell them things that they don't want to hear or not doing or saying things that you know are going to upset the people that are around you.
Right. But in the short term again.
Yeah.
In the short term again, if you look at a good mother upsets her kids a lot. Quit doing that. Why? Well, why? Why not just let your children do exactly what they want? When the answer to that is, well, first of all, it terrifies them because kids actually want walls. They don't want to be in the desert doing anything they want. They want a walled space in which they have the optimal amount of freedom. So a person who truly loves someone else doesn't strive at all costs never to upset them. That's the devouring mother. If you love someone, well, that's the biblical quote, you chastise them. Well, what does it mean? It's like, look, if you love someone and they're doing something stupid and self-destructive and you can see it, it's incumbent on you to say, this is going to upset you, but as far as I can tell, you're doing something stupid and self-destructive. And then there's going to be a tussle about that because they're going to say, well, who are you to judge? And that's a perfectly good question, is what makes you think you're right? And here's the reasons I'm doing this. And, these are the terrible experiences that I've had that have led me to take this path. And sometimes that can be really compelling. You meet people who are bitter and resentful, and then they tell you about their life, and you think, well, yeah. But then you meet people who've had just as terrible a life, who aren't bitter and resentful, right? And they're doing better. And so even if it seems justifiable, maybe even if it is justifiable, it's not justifiable.
One of the most common situations I think that this people-pleasing tendency would show up in is someone who maybe thinks that they should break up with a relationship but doesn't do it and sticks about in order to protect their partner. And I found a thread on Reddit that was 5 questions to ask yourself if you're unsure about your relationship. If someone told you you're a lot like your partner, would this be a compliment to you? Are you truly fulfilled or just less lonely? Are you able to be unapologetically yourself, or do you feel the need to show up differently to please your partner? Are you in love with who your partner is right now as a whole, or are you only in love with their good side, their potential, or the idea of them? And would you want your future or imagined child to date someone like your partner? And this thread was just filled with people having existential crises. And it seemed to me to be a collection of people who had managed to believe that continuing to manana, the short-term postponement of the discomfort of the decision that they wanted to have around their partner was somehow the noble thing to do, or the good thing to do, or the virtuous thing to do, or the thing that ultimately would result in the best outcome, even though they knew that if they spread it out long enough and then it's just hidden, we just shove it under the rug. So yeah, that list of 5 questions, I think...
well, in most relationships, you can break up or you can have 1,000 fights. And if you have 1,000 fights, then you don't have to fight. You make peace that way, because you're different than your partner. So there's things to work out there. And you might think about that as a compromise, but it's not. It's that you're different than your partner and you have to find a game that you both want to play. That's not a compromise. That's a solution. It's like you bring your skills to the table and I bring my skills to the table, and then we figure out some game we can play where we're both optimally utilized and it's a better game than we could play alone. That's not a compromise. Well, but getting to that's very difficult, and people bring all sorts of baggage to a relationship, and you have to, it's just like disciplining children, really. It's the same thing. Your children are, your children are annoying you. You can note that. I'm being annoyed by my child. Okay, so what questions do you ask? Am I a tyrannical son of a bitch who's touchy? Well, that's why you need your wife, because you can go ask her, my kids are annoying me. Am I a tyrannical son of a bitch who's touchy? And she said, yeah, you probably need something to eat, or you're a bit of a prick that way. And you got to listen because maybe it's you. Or maybe she says, yeah, that goddamn child's been getting on my case too. And then you ask each other, are we mutually tyrants? It's like, no, that kid's annoying. Okay, do we want him to be annoying? Well, if you love your child, then the answer to that would be no. Because if he's annoying you, he's going to annoy other people. He's going to annoy his potential friends. He's going to annoy other adults. He's going to go through the world being annoying, and everyone's going to frown at him. That's not helpful. So then you could just fix it. And that's going to cause some short-term upset. Maybe you have a 13-month-old child who's very extroverted and disagreeable, who rules the roost. And every time the mother goes more than a foot away from her, she has a squawk fit because she's learned to control. Maybe the mother, was still tied up with infant care and can't put down a boundary. And so now you have to do something about this emerging monster of a 14-month-old child. And one of the things you do is every time the child is bossy, first of all, you note it, and you note that you're not very fond of yourself for being tyrannized by a 14-month-old. That's a bit of a status hit, like it should be. So you have to notice, I'm annoyed by this child. Well, then I should do something about it. Well, it's going to cause short-term emotional distress. The same thing occurs when you're dealing with your partner. It's like, you're annoying me. Okay. Now, maybe that's me. So I should maybe we should have a talk about that. You're annoying me. Convince me that it's me. And I should listen because maybe it's me. And if I'm annoyed about you, and I shouldn't be, I should fix that. But maybe it's you. So let's find out exactly what's going on. And that'll usually, there's just constant thrust and counter thrust in a discussion like that. And usually, the conversation will circle around whatever the hell the issue is till you get to the bottom of it, and God only knows where that is. But then maybe you can sort it out. And if you sort out enough of those things, you live in peace. And that's something worth attaining, and I've thought forever in my marriage, there's nothing too small to fight about. Now, I put in some rules that I used to have with my clients too. It's like, if someone bugs you, you should note that. And you shouldn't do anything about it, probably. If they bug you twice the same way, then you think, oh, okay, that's twice. But probably still you shouldn't do anything about it. But if they bug you 3 times, then you can say, here's what you just did. And they'll say, well, no, I didn't do that. And then you say, yeah, you did. And you did exactly the same thing in this other situation. And you did exactly the same thing in this other situation. So don't be telling me you didn't do it because you did it 3 times and I watched. Okay, now they come up with reasons they did it. And maybe some of them have to do with what a stupid son of a bitch you are. And you should listen because maybe they're right. But that's at least the beginnings of the process by which you unravel the problems. You want to figure out, well, we don't want to do this. This isn't the way we want to treat each other. We want to get to a place where our whole life is like the best moments of the best dates we ever had. That's a good goal. And that's attainable. You got to work, man. There's a scene in Genesis. God throws Adam and Eve out of paradise because of their pride, their sin of pride. They each have their own particular version of that sin, Eve's sin and Adam's, but they get thrown out of paradise anyways. for pride. And God puts cherubs at the gates of paradise. And the cherubs, they're kind of these monstrous angels, terrifying figures. And they hold swords that are on fire that turn every which way and burn. And you might say, well, what does that mean? And it means that, well, a sword is something that cuts away, right? A sharp blade. And fire is something that burns. And a sword that burns and cuts away. And a sword that burns and turns every which way is a burning sword from which nothing can escape. Okay, now, you want to walk into paradise. Everything that isn't worthy in you has to be burned and cut away, right? Well, that's what that conflict is in a relationship. You know, it's like, that's not suitable for paradise. What does it have to do? It has to be cast into the outer darkness where there will be gnashing of teeth, right? It has to be cut away and destroyed. And everything that isn't worthy has to go.
Well, the Michelangelo effect is all about you and your partner becoming the idealized version of each other, right?